Something deeply worrying is happening in London right now. A new motion is being tabled by councillors that could change the way ordinary British people are labelled, simply for showing pride in their own flag. It's a move that strikes right at the heart of free expression, national identity, and what it even means to be proud of where you come from. And the language used in this proposal, honestly, it's something you'd expect to see in a political dictatorship, not a modern democracy. Stay with me, because when you hear what they're trying to redefine as extremism, you won't believe it. Let's break it down, but first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. So let's get this straight. A London council is now debating whether ordinary British people, the same men and women who simply raise their national flag in peaceful protest, should be officially branded as far-right extremists. Yes, you heard that right. Tower Hamlets Council, run by the Aspire Party and dominated by Labour councillors, is set to debate a motion that directly targets Operation Raise the Colours, a patriotic campaign that's been spreading across the country. Now, this isn't some fringe stunt. Operation Raise the Colours was born out of frustration. Frustration at seeing migrants placed into hotels without local consultation. Frustration at the government's failure to control borders, and frustration that the English flag itself has somehow become offensive. But instead of listening to local concerns, this council is doubling down on the narrative that patriotism equals extremism. The motion, put forward by Labour councillors Mufida Boustin and Abdi Mohammed, calls for the council to stand up to the far right and celebrate diversity. On the surface, that sounds harmless, but dig just a little deeper and you find something far more concerning. Because buried inside their proposal is language that directly ties Operation Raise the Colours to so-called far-right narratives. It claims that local worries about safety around migrant hotels, including reports of attacks over the summer, have been entwined with far-right ideology under the banner of keeping women and children safe. Let that sink in. They're saying that raising concerns about women's safety or wanting answers about who's being housed in your community is now part of a far-right narrative. Even Brexit is labelled a far-right narrative in the motion. That's right, the single biggest democratic vote in modern British history, supported by 17.4 million people, is being lumped in with extremism. It gets worse. The motion goes on to argue that migrants and refugees contribute more to the UK economy than they take out, something that's highly contested and far from universally accepted. It also claims that linking Britain's economic crisis to rising migration is factually incorrect and deliberately divisive. So in other words, if you question whether mass immigration might be putting pressure on housing, jobs, or public services, you're not just wrong, you're causing division. This is the language of censorship disguised as virtue. And it's coming from elected officials who, rather than addressing residents' genuine concerns, are working overtime to smear those residents as extremists. Councillor Buston, one of the councillors behind the motion, even works part-time for a legal action NGO that claims to defend marginalised people. And her colleague, Councillor Mohammed, boasts on social media about running campaign operations for Sadiq Khan. In other words, these aren't neutral voices. They're deeply entrenched in London's political establishment. Now, let's remember the backdrop here. Over the summer, Operation Raise the Colours saw ordinary locals hoist English and British flags across towns and cities, many of them around hotels where migrants had been suddenly placed by the Home Office, often with no consultation at all. The response from councils like Tower Hamlets was to send out maintenance crews to remove those flags as soon as possible, claiming they were attached to council infrastructure without permission. But at the same time, Palestinian flags were allowed to fly for months without any issue. No condemnation, no emergency motion, no maintenance crew in sight. That's what people mean when they talk about two-tier Britain. The rules bend depending on who's expressing themselves and whether their message fits the approved political narrative. Even former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has weighed in, calling it absurd national self-loathing. And he's right. When a local council tries to equate the Union Jack with extremism, it's not just an attack on one movement, it's an attack on the very idea of being proudly British. We now live in a country where raising your flag can get you branded a fascist, but flying another nation's flag is celebrated as inclusivity. This Tower Hamlets motion isn't about safety, equality, or tolerance. It's about control of narrative, deciding who's allowed to speak, and who's to be shamed into silence. So the question is simple. When did loving your country become a thought crime? In other news, Jeremy Clarkson has argued that it is time for a complete rethink of the National Health Service, raising questions about its financial sustainability as the country braces for Labour's 2025 budget. With Chancellor Rachel Reeves already warning of tough decisions ahead and taxes expected to rise on November 26th, the future of Britain's health system has been dragged into the debate once again. Business taxes, pension rules, ISA reform, property levies, VAT, and income tax are all expected to be part of Reeves's package. But Clarkson believes ministers are looking in the wrong place. Writing in his Sunday Times column, he suggested that more attention should be directed toward how the NHS is funded and run. He began his column with an anecdote about tanning beds, recalling their popularity in the 1980s and admitting he never used them. While he said that, as a libertarian, he had no objection to people overusing the machines, he noted that we don't live in libertarian times, and now there are calls to ban tanning salons immediately. No compensation for the business owners, no alternatives for the fans, just a ban. Clarkson argued that, in theory, such bans would save the NHS money by cutting down on skin cancer cases. He went further, pointing to wood-burning stoves and even poor diets as examples of lifestyle factors that governments could try to eliminate in the name of cutting costs. We see this logic everywhere. They've even brought immigration into the mix, saying it's vital that those small boats keep arriving on the beaches every day because they are bringing people who work in hospitals for minimum wage, which will save the NHS a fortune, he added. But he also highlighted the contradictions in this thinking. He cited Health Secretary Wes Streeting's review into overseas medical staff after it was revealed that some had previously been deemed unfit to practice in their home countries. Now the scandal has been exposed, that'll have to change, Clarkson wrote, warning that reforms could cost the NHS a fortune and potentially fuel higher taxes. The Clarkson's Farm Star has previously criticised Reeves and Labour over tax policy, particularly changes affecting inheritance tax for farmers. On the NHS, he offered a blunt conclusion. Today, the population is 70 million, and every single one of us wants new eyes and to live forever. And that's impossible. Somehow, no one ever applies this logic to the NHS. So instead of a complete rethink, more money is demanded from us, and we are banned from being tanned and happy and warm to try to keep the creaking old monster going. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you, take care, goodbye.